Hi everyone, welcome back to This Case Takes Place, and today's case is possibly, I think, the most notorious true crime case I'd probably say ever.
Ever.
I think this is probably the biggest case that's happened, at least in recent. I think Jack the Ripper and this are the two biggest I can think of off the top of my head. So this is the case of Madeleine McCann. You've likely heard of it, but we thought we'd go through, because I didn't even know all the details.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be interesting to go through 3 different stages of 3 different standalone episodes. Episode 1, what happened? Episode 2, all the possible theories, and episode 3, the main suspect.
Yeah.
So people who think he's the guy responsible, because his story is insane in itself.
Standalone. Yeah.
So we're going to try and cover all aspects of this as concisely as possible, but also quite in depth too. So this case takes place on the 3rd of May 2007 in Praia da Luz, Portugal. Madeleine McCann was born on the 12th of May 2003 in Leicester, England. She was described by those who knew her as a real cutie and a real sweetheart. And she was an attentive big sister to her 2-year-old twin siblings, Sean and Amelie. In May of 2007, Madeleine and her family were enjoying a holiday in Portugal in Praia da Luz. This was with her twin siblings and with her parents, Kate and Jerry McCann. Jerry and Kate were travelling with a group of 7 friends, the majority of whom were doctors. These 7 friends would later be nicknamed by the press the Tapas 7, as they would all dine at the tapas restaurant of the holiday resort most evenings. It was the perfect holiday. Pool days with the children, tennis lessons with their friends and colleagues. That was until the 6th day of the holiday, when everything changed. The McCanns were staying in a small ground floor flat with a small patio opening out to the grounds of the Ocean Club Resort, which is where they were staying. That morning, Kate and Jerry McCann dropped their 3 children off at the resort's kids club. The children played there until lunchtime, when the family regrouped at the apartment. After eating together, they spent the rest of the afternoon swimming at the pool in the resort. At 3:30 p.m, the children returned once again to the kids' club, where they stayed until dinner, which was around 5:30. At 6 p.m, Kate took the children back to the apartment, while Jerry left for a tennis lesson. At around 6:30, the family friend called David Payne checked in, and he found Kate and the children seemingly in good spirits. By 7 p.m, Jerry returned, and together the parents settled the children into bed. The twins were tucked into their cots in the centre of the small bedroom. Meanwhile, Madeleine was placed into the single bed closest to the door. Another bed beneath the window remained empty. The window itself looked out onto the street and its parking lot. Its shutters were down, and the parents left the bedroom door slightly ajar. Kate and Jerry then showered, dressed for dinner, and shared a glass of wine before leaving at 8:35 p.m. They walked just 50 yards across the resort to the tapas restaurant, where they were due to meet their friends, which were later called, as we said, the Tapas 7.
The group had agreed to check on their children in shifts every 20 or 30 minutes or so that Jerry and Kate would be able to enjoy the night without constantly getting up and leaving. At around 9:05 p.m, Jerry returned to apartment 5A, slipping inside through the unlocked patio doors. He avoided using the front door, which was besides the children's bedroom, for fear of waking them up. He noticed the bedroom door was wider than before, at about 45 degrees open. Inside, however, all 3 children appeared sound asleep. He gently closed the door, back to only slightly ajar, used the bathroom, and left. On his way back to the restaurant, he stopped to chat with another holidaymaker for several minutes. Then, at around 9:30 p.m, Kate stood to make her own check, but fellow diner Matthew offered to look in on the McCann's children while checking in on his own. Entering via the patio, he found the bedroom door wide open this time. He peered into the room, saw the twins in their cots, but did not step far enough in to confirm Madeleine's presence. Satisfied by the dark and quiet, he left. Then, at around 10 p.m, Kate walked back to apartment 5A. As she approached the children's room, a strange detail struck her. She recalls that the door suddenly blew shut. Pushing it open, she stepped inside. The window was open, its shutters raised. The twins slept peacefully in their cots, but Madeleine's bed, the one closest to the door, was empty. Her favourite toy was still there, but Madeleine was gone. Kate ran back to the tapas restaurant in a state of hysteria, screaming, "Madeleine is gone, someone's taken her." The group of friends scattered. Some sprinted through corridors and gardens, others ran to the reception desk. Jane Tanner, one of the guests, suddenly recalled what she had seen earlier in the evening. At around 9:15 p.m, she had passed a man walking along the street carrying what looked like a small child in pajamas. At the time, she had dismissed it. Now the memory seemed chilling. By 10:10, the Ocean Club Resort had erupted into chaos. Staff, guests, and friends searched frantically through corridors, gardens, and even the swimming pool areas. The twins, however, remained asleep in their cots, completely oblivious. The resort's missing child protocol was finally activated, and then at around 10:30 p.m., police were finally called. The McCanns naturally were inconsolable. Witnesses described Kate pacing, pale and near catatonic, while Jerry desperately looked under cars in the parking lots, searching for any signs of his daughter. One of the resort's childminders recalled trying to comfort Kate as she repeatedly said over and over, "They've taken her." Resort staff fanned out through the surrounding streets. Some ordered to check bins in case Madeleine's body had been discarded there. The horrifying implication hung in the air. This was no accident. Yet crucial minutes were slipping away. The first Portuguese police officers arrived around 10:30 to 11 p.m., nearly 90 minutes after the alarm was raised. By then, the apartment had been trampled by friends, neighbors, and staff, so basically any potential evidence was already compromised from the start. There was nobody to say we need to lock this off now, the nanny later recalled. I know I didn't step into that apartment, but pretty much everyone else did. So, evidence gone, nothing. Detectives finally arrived at around 11:10 p.m., beginning a search that lasted until 4 a.m. Flashlights cut across walls, patios, and shrubberies, but Madeleine was nowhere. There were no footprints, no fingerprints, no definitive leads. Witness statements conflicted. The nanny claimed her original 4 or 5 page statement was reduced to a mere 2 pages by investigators, cutting out whole chunks of information. And as night turned to dawn, the air still held the echo of Kate McCann's scream. Madeleine was gone, and with her disappearance began one of the most haunting mysteries of modern times.
By the 4th of May 2007, the search had already spanned the length of Praia da Luz. From midnight until the early hours, staff, holidaymakers, anyone scoured rooftops, alleyways, and even pools. And yet, according to Kate McCann, roadblocks were not set up until 10 a.m. the following morning, a full 12 hours after she had first raised the alarm that Madeleine was missing. By then, if an abductor had taken Madeleine by car, they could be anywhere, miles away. And the oversights only mounted. Portuguese police never requested surveillance footage of vehicles leaving Praia da Luz that night. They didn't ask for records from the main road towards Spain. The company responsible, Euroscope, later confirmed that they had never been approached. And here's the worst thing, it took Interpol 5 days to issue a global missing person report. Meanwhile, the integrity of apartment 5A, the epicenter of the disappearance, slipped through the cracks. Samples were taken from Madeleine's bedroom and sent to 3 forensic labs, but it was already too late. The chief inspector working on the case later admitted that by the time the scene was formally secured, around 20 people had entered the apartment. Friends, resort staff, family, and, get this, even just curious onlookers who were there at the time. So the site is completely compromised. And an officer placed a strip of police tape across the crime scene and the doorway of where Madeleine was staying. But then they left at 3 a.m, leaving the crime scene without sealing it. According to the 2008 Portuguese police case files, the apartment lay empty for a month. Then, in a staggering decision, it was rented out again to tourists, before finally being sealed again in August of 2007 for further forensic testing. By this point, it's fully compromised. There's not much you could really do with this now. And outside, it was no better. Crowds gathered near the front door of the apartment 5A, pressing close to the children's bedroom window, the very spot where the abductor might have used to gain entry. In one particularly damning moment, an officer dusted the exterior shutter of the bedroom window for prints, but he used no gloves and no protective equipment. It would come later in June that a senior officer of the Portuguese police admitted that the crime scene had not been protected properly and that the police did not conduct the investigation as they should have, which is an understatement. The investigation had barely begun, yet evidence had already been compromised to a serious degree. This single place that might have revealed what happened to Madeleine had been irreversibly contaminated. And so with this, Britain steps in. Although the inquiry and the crime obviously took place in Portugal, the disappearance of a British child meant that the UK had to step in. So then, a strategic coordinating body was created, which is known as a Gold Group. This drew in senior and experienced representatives from a number of bodies. This was the Leicestershire Police, the Serious Organised Crime Agency, the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Centre, and the National Police Improvement Agency. This basically just meant to bring in the best available people for the job, and they were going to work with the Portuguese police to try and solve this as soon as possible. The Portuguese police, under pressure, gave the British police a room to work in, but beneath this polite surface, there was a great deal of friction. Resentment simmered as there was stark differences between the way the British police handled cases like this and the Portuguese police, and it was widely different. So essentially, the British police were very good at handling evidence in a very systemic manner.
Yeah.
So they would log everything electronically, everything would be filed away very properly, very neatly, in a very good way.
Yeah, and they used an online database, so everyone could access it.
You could access it, and it'd be very, very easy to pull up evidence whenever needed. However, the Portuguese police used paper. So this meant filing things. When it came to the British and the Portuguese police working together, there was a bit of, the friction straight away or as you can imagine. And the perception of this was that the British brought with them a colonial power attitude that the Portuguese didn't appreciate. Ironic, because the Portuguese were one of the biggest colonial powers in the past, but they saw this as a bigger force putting unnecessary pressure on a smaller force.
Yeah. But you would think a child's gone missing, be humble, let's all work together and actually just try and do the best that we can to save this little girl. And instead they weren't. I mean, quite frankly, Portuguese police, you were putting away critical evidence in paper, putting them in boxes and hiding them in a room.
Yeah.
Whereas the British are like, hello, there's this much easier way to do it. We use this system. Would you like to partake? And they're like, look at them telling us how to do things.
The British police aren't perfect by any stretch, and they've messed up many cases. However, it seems like the Portuguese police...
No one has done worse than this.
Yeah, this is the biggest disappearance of all time, and it couldn't have been handled any worse from the offset, and that was due to the Portuguese police.
Yeah. And for me, I feel like reading this and how much friction there was at the time between the two forces, mainly by the Portuguese getting agitated at the British for imposing themselves. When you find out just how incompetent the Portuguese police were, it's not like they made some accidents, they made some mistakes. They were actively really defensive over systems that were really improper.
Yeah.
Like they really could have used this opportunity to learn and grow, and the attitude was just abysmal from the start.
Yeah.
Imagine if they had just taken some advice from the beginning.
Yeah, it would have been far better.
Things would have been different.
Yeah. And also when you're dealing with the disappearance of a little girl, get on with it.
Yeah.
It's not about you. It's not about egos anymore.
No.
It's like, just get this sorted out.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously at this point of the investigation, they've just started, they're scouring, the area. And then the next immediate step is to look into, witnesses. What did anyone see? Did you see anything? And what happens is that there are two main sightings. So the first one is described as the Tanner sighting. So as mentioned, amongst the Tapper 7, Jane Tanner had recalled seeing a man at around 9:15 p.m. Just after 9, Jane left the restaurant to check on her own daughter. As she walked along one of the streets, she passed Jerry, who was returning from his own 9:05 p.m. check. Jerry had stopped to chat with another British holidaymaker, so Jane's passing and she sees them. Neither Jerry nor the holidaymaker, however, recalled seeing Jane walk past them. This baffled the Portuguese police as the street was very narrow. To them, it suggested Tanner might have invented what she later claimed to have seen. Because at around 9:15 p.m., Tanner said she noticed a man carrying a young child across the junction of two streets just ahead of her. He was moving east away from the front of apartment 5A in the direction of a man called Robert Murat. So we'll discuss him shortly. He was a 33-year-old British-Portuguese man, and he would become the investigation's first suspect. So this man's carrying a child in that direction of this man's home. This child, Tanner said, was dressed in light-coloured pyjamas with a floral pattern and leg cuffs, which was strikingly similar to the ones Madeleine had been wearing. And her description of the man was very precise. He was white, dark-haired, about 5'7", aged 35 to 40, of Mediterranean or Southern European appearance, wearing gold or beige trousers and a dark jacket, and he definitely did not look like a tourist. According to Kate, Jane passed this information to Portuguese police the same night Madeleine was reported missing. But inexplicably, the description was not shared with the media until later, the 25th of May. Madeleine's fund later hired a forensic artist, and in October 2007, an image of the man was released. For years, Tanner's sighting was treated as critical to the timeline, anchoring the presumed moment of abduction. So essentially, as this investigation happened, this sighting was the main one that everyone kind of focused in on. However, there was a second sighting, and this sighting is referred to as the Smith sighting. So on the 26th of May 2007, so that's 3 weeks after Madeleine had vanished, two people, one called Martin and Mary Smith, so these were Irish holidaymakers, told Portuguese police that they had seen a man carrying a child on the night of May the 3rd. At 10 o'clock, as Kate was about to discover that Madeleine was missing, the Smiths were walking along a street roughly 500 yards from apartment 5A. They saw a man heading away from the Ocean Club towards the beach. He carried a girl, 3 to 4 years old, barefoot in light-coloured pajamas. She was pale-skinned with blonde hair. The man was described in his mid-30s, slim to normal build. He was around 5'7", 5'9". He had short brown hair. He was wearing cream or beige trousers. And again, like the first sighting, the Tanner sighting, he did not look like a tourist. However, crucially, this man seemed uncomfortable carrying the child, whereas the first man looked pretty comfortable. E-fits based on this second testimony were first drawn in 2008 by a company called Oakley International, which was basically the private investigation firm that the McCanns hired. But however, these were not circulated until 2013, when Scotland Yard featured them on the BBC's Crime Watch. So in essence, until 2013, the first sighting is the main one that everyone was focusing in on.
So as Cassie mentioned, the man Robert Murrett. Well, as a result of the Jane Tanner sighting, 12 days after Madeleine's disappearance, suspicion fell on him. So Robert Murrett was a 35-year-old property consultant who lived with his mother in a villa in the very direction the Tanner sighting had suggested the abductor had walked. Murrett was born in Hammersmith, London. He volunteered as an interpreter for the local Portuguese police in the early days of the investigation. He said he wanted to help because he had a daughter back home in England who was around the same age as Madeleine. But on the 15th of May 2007, the Portuguese police named him as the first arguido, which basically means a formal suspect in Portugal. This came after a journalist reported that he had been asking too many questions, and with this, suspicion spread. So 3 members of the Tapa 7, that's the McCann's friends who they were on holiday with, they told the police that they had actually seen Robert Murrett outside apartment 5A shortly after Madeleine had vanished. An Ocean Club nanny and 2 other British tourists also said the same. Murrett and his mother, however, insist that he was at home the entire evening and that these are just lies. The Portuguese police responded with force and they searched Robert's home, they drained his pool, they looked at his car, his phones, his computers, seized all electronic devices, and they searched his garden with ground radar and sniffer dogs. And not only this as well, 2 of his associates were also arrested. So they went in hard with Murrett. There must have been a fair bit for them to assume that he was the one responsible.
6 people in total.
Yeah, and some lies, inconsistencies coming from him. So as suspicion fell on Robert, things did turn a little bit toxic. In March of 2008, one of these associates' car was set on fire with the word Fala written in red spray paint on his pavement. Fala means speak. But despite this media frenzy, nothing linked Murrett or his friends to Madeleine. His Aguido status was officially lifted on the 21st of July 2008 when the case was archived. In April of 2008, he won £600,000 in libel settlements from the British tabloids, which is a record number of separate claims brought by one man, and each of his friends received £100,000. Weeks then turned to months, and the police just couldn't find anything on Robert Murrett. So, whilst they were empty-handed, they began to look elsewhere. From this point on, the British police gave direction and orders for the Portuguese police to do a number of things, which the Portuguese police didn't want to do. This was to search the beaches and shorelines, the open area near the village, and Robert Murrett's property, which we just mentioned. They also wanted to re-examine the apartment 5A and the apartments of the Tapa 7. They wanted to inspect any hired vehicles and use ground-penetrating radar. And critically, they brought in 2 of South Yorkshire's best spaniels, Eddie and Keeler. And these aren't just any dogs, these are world-class dogs trained to sniff out things like blood, decaying bodies. They are very, very useful in murder cases. So Eddie, the cadaver dog, is trained to give a sharp bark when detecting the chemical scent of human decomposition. And Keela, the blood dog, is trained to silently alert their handler when picking up microscopic traces of human blood. So the man who handles these dogs later said that human decomposition is very persistent, very pungent. He said, "We've located graves 40 years after the body was removed. With blood, even if cleaned until invisible, the scent still remains and the dogs will find it."
The first test using the sniffer dogs was the holiday apartment itself. Eddie, which is the cadaver dog, entered and his demeanour shifted instantly. He tensed, he sniffed hard, moving towards the living room. Behind the sofa he froze, then barked. He moved again towards the wardrobe in the main bedroom, another bark. So that's 2 separate alerts, both for cadaver scents. Keela, the blood dog, then followed. She gave no bark, but stopped and indicated in the same area behind the sofa, which is the signal for human blood. 2 dogs, 2 different signals, and both in the same place behind the sofa. Then, the test didn't stop at the apartment. On the 2nd of August 2007, Martin Grime, the handler, and his dogs searched the McCann's rented home on Rua de Flores. In the lounge, Eddie, the cadaver dog, alerted towards Madeleine's favourite soft toy, Cuddle Cat. Kate McCann had carried it constantly since the disappearance. Later, it was revealed, however, that Kate had already washed this toy in July, which was 18 days prior to the dogs arriving and roughly 77 days after Madeleine's disappearance. She later expressed regret in case the toy may have retained some forensic value, but despite being washed, Eddie the cadaver dog still reacted and barked. According to her diary, which was taken by Portuguese police and leaked to the media, Kate washed Cuddle Cat on the 12th of July because, quote, "I was hoping not to have to do it until Madeleine returns, but it was now quite dirty and smelly, unfortunately without the smell of Madeleine on it." I'd also read that she said she washed it because it smelled like suntan lotion and like sunscreen. And to be fair, that's pretty pungent. If you've ever put on suntan, like once a little bit gets on something, it's like pretty intense. But
a lot of people have found that to be quite strange why she would wash that.
yes, it is strange. But if
Yeah.
it stinks like sunscreen, I might not. I probably wouldn't have washed it.
I wouldn't have washed it.
No. But anyway, we shall continue.
Because it's obviously quite sentimental to her. Well, she was carried around everywhere and was photographed with it. So if she was that sentimentally attached to it, why wash it?
Yeah. Well, she says because it was filthy.
Even if it smells like sun cream or what, like anything
Yeah.
like that. I don't know. I find that weird. I'm not saying any.
Lots of people did.
I'm not making any claims, but it is a bit strange.
You're suspect that you're suspicious of the McCann. But I agree. It is a very odd detail.
It's just weird.
It is. And then also Eddie barking at it.
Yeah.
That there was cadaver scent. So why it's very suspicious. Later, at a neutral venue, Portuguese police laid out boxes of seized clothing. Eddie, the cadaver dog, again reacted, this time to clothing from one of the boxes. The local Portuguese police logged the details. However, the trainer didn't record exactly which garment it was. The significance, however, was stark. The dogs weren't just alerting in the apartment, they were now reacting to the family's personal belongings, so Cuddle Cat, as well as the clothes. The most damning search, however, came in the underground car park where the McCann's hire car, a Renault Scenic, was tested. The McCanns hired the Renault Scenic 25 days after Madeleine's disappearance and was not the car they'd been using during the holiday. Both dogs alerted. Eddie, the cadaver dog, barked at the boot and at the driver's door. Keela, the blood dog, silently indicated the map compartment in the driver's door where the ignition key and key ring were kept. To test them further, investigators hid the key ring under sand in a fire bucket. Keela, the blood dog, alerted again. When it was moved to a different part of the car park, she found it there too. So she's very persistent about this key. Eddie, the cadaver dog, who was brought back later, marked the bucket location where the key had been hidden as well. So blood and possibly cadaver scent on the key, the car key. The dogs had spoken in the apartment now, in the car, on the toy, as well as on some clothes, and now also on the keys. For detectives already under pressure, the implications were chilling. Cadaver scent, blood traces, not just in the place that Madeleine had vanished, but in the McCann's possessions and the very car they had driven after she had already disappeared. Although circumstantial, the pattern was impossible to ignore. As a result, samples from the car, including swabs, fibres, and specific cuttings from the luggage compartment, were shipped to the UK in Birmingham. Because these amounts were so tiny and likely mixed, the scientists used a test called low copy number, LCN, DNA profiling. So this scientific test can be very effective at extracting results from trace tiny materials, but unfortunately, it's also notoriously tricky with samples that are mixtures and or overlapping from multiple people. But that's really all they had because everything had already gone. So they just needed to pick up, is there any microscopic trace of Madeleine anywhere here? After a nail-biting wait by the police, Dr. John Lowe of the forensic team in Birmingham emailed the results on the 3rd of September 2007. Dr. Lowe explained that the luggage compartment DNA was a complex mixture from at least 3 people, so the results are mixed. In particular, 15 of 19 components detected in that mixture also appear in Madeleine's known reference pile. So, although this sounds like a match, 15 out of 19 sounds very high, because of the nature of this test, as we discussed, when there is multiple contributors and overlapping alleles and low quantities, the test results were not clear. Essentially, what this means is that because families, you're living on top of each other, you naturally exchange DNA. DNA, your skin's, cells shed very easily, especially when things are moved around. So even though the car was hired weeks after the disappearance, the chance of an innocent transfer is really high. Also, the test, as the McCanns later claimed, could have been the 15 of the 19 alleles could have also been shared with the twins. So ultimately, the tests are so unclear that Dr. Lowe explicitly states that the data results were, quote, too complex for meaningful interpretation. Simply put, it cannot be said whether Madeleine's DNA is in that mixture or not, and if so, whether it's fresh or if it's old and it just transferred later. So although these results wouldn't come back until the 3rd of September, despite this, by the end of the car search, the suspicion had officially turned. The investigation shifted away from the image of a faceless abductor and instead focused squarely on Kate and Jerry McCann.
So then another theory was put forward, and this theory is far darker. So that some people believe, or this is the theory that got put forward, that Madeleine might have died accidentally in apartment 5A, and that her parents staged an abduction to cover it up. On the 6th of June 2007, a German journalist stunned Jerry and Kate at their Berlin press conference by bluntly asking them, "Did you kill your daughter?" By the 30th of June, a Portuguese newspaper published a 3,000-word exposé called The Madeleine Case, A Pact of Silence. It claimed that the McCanns and their friends were hiding the truth. They highlighted inconsistencies in their statements and even implied that Jane Tanner's sighting had been completely fabricated. And around this time, the Portuguese police were intentionally leaking information to the press and even released the Tapas 7's mobile phone numbers and other witnesses. Soon, wild allegations spread across newspapers and televisions, later amplified endlessly on social media. Many people began to claim that the McCanns and their friends were swingers, that they had been sedating their children whilst they were eating dinner, and that they had formed a pact of silence about what really happened that night. The press even dubbed Kate as the cold mother. Every discrepancy was magnified. For example, the police noted that Jerry initially told them that he used the locked front door for his 9:05 check, then later said that he had entered through the unlocked patio doors. Whether the front door was ever locked became a point of contention. People also began to wonder, why did Kate run all the way back to the restaurant to raise the alarm, leaving the 2 twins alone? Why didn't she take the twins with her, or why didn't she stay there and maybe phone or do something else? People found this to be rather strange. Even the window shutter became an issue. Was it possible to open from the outside, as Kate and Jerry believed? Or impossible without force, as the Portuguese claimed? To the local Portuguese police, these inconsistencies pointed in one direction, that there had been no abduction. Madeleine was killed either on purpose or accidentally, and that the McCanns were covering it up. By August, suspicions had hardened into theory. Madeleine had died in the apartment, possibly by accident, perhaps after sedation, her body hidden, and then later moved into the McCanns' rental car. This is what some claimed. We're not claiming it right now, but this is what some people were claiming. Amid this growing suspicion, the McCanns themselves made a desperate gamble. On the 28th of June 2007, they suggest the local police seek help from someone called Diane Krugel, a South African ex-police officer who claimed to have invented a matter orientation system, a handheld device that could locate missing people using DNA and satellite signals. The lead inspector working on the case was a man named Gonçalo Amaral, and for him, this was confirmation of his growing belief that the McCanns were responsible and that they were hiding the truth. And now, grasping at this bizarre technology to try and put police on a different path or take direction away from them, essentially. It was at this point that the Portuguese police put forward a deal. If Kate admitted that Madeleine had died in an accident in the apartment and that she had hidden the body, that she would only face 2 years in prison and that Jerry, they promised, would not be charged. However, both of them refused to do so. As a result, on the 6th of September 2007, Kate McCann was formally interviewed. In these interviews, Jerry answered questions, but Kate, on the advice of her lawyer, declined to respond to 48 questions during an 11-hour session. Portuguese police told them that Madeleine's DNA had been found in the car boot and behind the sofa in the apartment. These were lies, however, as the police already had the results that declared the samples inconclusive 3 days before this interrogation. Despite this, the next day, on the 7th of September, both she and Jerry were declared aguidos, formal suspects. 2 days later, on the 9th of September, the McCanns returned to the UK, and they landed not as grieving parents, but under a cloud of suspicion. They were watched closely by detectives and by millions of strangers reading headlines. Many people began to say that Kate and Jerry McCann, if they weren't responsible for killing her, that they were still responsible for her abduction, as they had left a child unattended in a foreign country. Meanwhile, back in Portugal, journalists in Portugal were soon incorrectly told that the DNA we mentioned before that was found in the car and the apartment was a 100% match, which was very untrue. Headlines across Europe read things like "corpse in McCann car" and "another clump of Maddie's hair found in car." These leaks, it later emerged in 2012, had come directly from Portuguese police. So, as we mentioned, they weren't even just incompetent, they were just spreading fake news.
Yeah, so bad.
To me, it almost feels like the police were deliberately trying to mess things up.
Yeah.
They just seemed so... not even just incompetent, it's like another level.
Yeah. I mean, they clearly... They know how to do things. They have their methods. They decided amongst themselves it was the McCanns, and now it was a matter of, okay, let's just wrap this up, and they're just going to start leaking things to the press and to get the whole media like frenzy turned on them. And then it was like they were literally just intentionally...
They were thinking the truth will come out soon and they're probably responsible, so let's just start doing it now.
Yeah.
And by the time it comes out, then, it's all fine or whatever, but...
It's so bad.
So bad. When you read about what the Portuguese police did...
And they leaked all the information of the Tapa 7 and other witnesses, like their phone numbers. They just gave that out to the journalists so they could get harassed.
Yeah, I'd be suing left, right and centre.
Yeah, so bad.
And here's the crazy part too. So the British police even knew that the Portuguese police were spreading fake rumours about the McCanns, and they chose not to do anything out of fear that the Portuguese police might become a bit disgruntled, a bit angry, and that it would sever their working relationship
even more.
So they chose just to not say anything, that's another level of incompetence on the British police too. Incompetency all around. That should have been called out straight away.
The British were like, our main goal here is Madeleine.
I guess so.
I guess if the parents go under, like that's not our business, because our business is the little girl who's missing. And again, I kind of appreciate that attitude on some level, because it's like, the British have their eye on the goal. Find the girl, no matter what, and we need to do, even if we have to deal with these incompetent people who are intentionally...
Let them do their thing while we try and solve it. Oops,
yeah.
Shit, I just twatted the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah, let them solve... Yeah. Okay, that's fair enough.
I kind of appreciate that, to be honest. It's a bit ruthless. And to be maybe, hopefully, Jerry and Kate would appreciate that on some level.
Yeah.
Like... if it was going to potentially ruin the relationship and interfere with their investigation, then we're happy to take the hit for it, whatever. Just like keep finding her. But that's wild that this even was a conversation amongst the British, being like, look, we know the Portuguese police leaking everything to the journalists, but like, let's just carry on.
You can't say anything because I might get a bit upset.
Oh my gosh, it's so frustrating.
When it's about a kid.
What is about a kid? The case was unlike anything the Portuguese police had ever faced due to the severity of the media frenzy. By 2010, one Portuguese officer openly admitted what many had whispered. They had been suspicious of the McCanns from the start, not because of evidence, but because of the media circus. Jerry himself later told Vanity Fair in 2008 that he had made the conscious decision to, quote, market Madeleine. So that is to keep her face on front pages to keep the story alive. Within days of Madeleine's disappearance, a procession of public relations consultants descended on Praia da Luz. In the first 10 days, a private British PR giant took control of the media narrative, and then, in a move Portuguese police deeply resented, the British government sent its own press officers. That decision changed everything, and it put the McCanns under scrutiny behind closed doors in the eyes of the Portuguese police. It was the very press frenzy that the McCanns whipped up that ultimately turned on them. The press had devoured every scrap of rumour alleging the McCanns killed or covered up the death of Madeleine, and the tabloids speculated wildly. In October 2007, the McCanns launched a counter-offensive, and they sued several newspapers for defamation and false reporting. And part of the spree included suing Gonçalo Amaral, so that was the Portuguese police former chief inspector. He was removed from the case in 2007, but then published his book, The Truth of the Lie, shortly after. In it, he declared his belief that Madeleine had died in apartment 5A and that the abduction had been staged. The McCanns sued for libel and initially won, and they initially were awarded damages of over 600,000 euros. But Amaral appealed successfully in 2016, and the McCanns lost their final appeal in 2017. So despite the media frenzy turning on them, the McCanns refused to let the case go cold and tried to use the press to their advantage. They launched public campaigns, hired private investigators, and released sketches of potential suspects. By August, 100 days since Madeleine's disappearance, investigators publicly admitted she may not be found alive. And as time continued to slip away, many alleged sightings of Madeleine were reported in Portugal, including one 3 weeks after Madeleine's disappearance of a girl with her distinctive eye blemish in the Algarve resort of Vila Moura near Faro. Another caller to police around the same time reported seeing a girl being pushed by a man in the northern city of Porto. Madeleine has also been seen at a book fair in Rio de Janeiro, on a train between Brussels and Antwerp, on a boat in Egypt, at an airport in China, and even a religious shrine in Bosnia. In total, there were 8,000 sightings reported between 2007 and 2013, and none of them were ultimately verified. Just when the trail appeared to go cold, a new person of interest emerges. So in August 2009, the McCanns investigators released an e-fit image of a highly significant woman seen at a port in Barcelona around the 7th of May 2007. So that was 3 days after Madeleine disappeared. This will be discussed in detail in next week's episode. However, this woman allegedly asked a British holidaymaker, "Have you got the child?" As a result of this report in 2009, investigators considered her a potential accomplice and explored the idea of whether Madeleine might have been moved by a yacht from Praia da Luz to Barcelona. Lead investigator at the time called it a strong line of inquiry and appealed for public information. Later in that year, in November 2009, Jerry released a video chilling in its suggestion. He believed the family had been watched by a predator in the days before Madeleine vanished. Then in 2010, frustration boiled over. The Portuguese police files, including reports of possible sightings, were released to British newspapers. The McCanns condemned the release. And a month later, Jerry told reporters it was incredibly frustrating that police in both Portugal and the UK have now stopped actively looking for his daughter. So in order to generate more attention on the case, to kickstart the search for Madeleine once more, Kate McCann released the book Madeleine, Our Daughter's Disappearance and the Continuing Search for Her. The book launched on the 12th of May 2011, and on the same day, Prime Minister David Cameron asked the Metropolitan Police to step in and continue the search for Madeleine. So in that sense, she was very much successful in her goal. The release of the book was overall extremely positive, as the book explicitly emphasized that any royalties earned from this book would go directly to the Madeleine's Fund and the ongoing search. Despite this, there were many who dissected the book, sentence for sentence, word for word, to highlight suspicious details. One example is on page 164, where Kate states how she imagined perfect little genitals being torn apart. Some have found this description unsettling and suspicious. To this day, many who believe the parents were in some way involved point to this statement, as it's not something that a normal parent would say. Despite some criticisms, the book ultimately achieved its goal, as mentioned, to get Madeleine's case back in the police's eye and to renew the search for her.
That line has always really bothered me.
Mm.
I'm not a mum, obviously. But like, it goes without saying that it really, yeah. But like, I don't know. It's just a very weird thing to say. So I don't know. I don't know. It just feels weird. But then I can imagine if you were thinking about someone stealing your daughter, the image of someone doing something horrific to her might pop into your mind.
Yeah.
Obviously,
In
it might be like a horrible, intrusive thought.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Well, the whole point of the book is like a raw, honest look. And like that is absolutely...
That is as raw as it gets, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it must cross your mind. I mean, it's crossed everyone's mind. Like, has she been used for?
Yeah, for sure.
As a trafficking victim. And that
For sure.
implies heavily that she's going to be used for.
I don't think that statement's weird that she would think that. But to put that in a book and to put that in public, that is a very raw and honest. Like, I don't like that's maybe it's not something I would have done. That I would have kept that to myself in the horrors of my mind.
I mean, it's an uncomfortable sentence, but it's the reality of what could have happened to her.
It's a reality, isn't it?
It could have happened.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an awful thing
awful.
to say.
But that is definitely something that people discuss online, that's not what a normal parent would say. And again, we'll discuss the suspects more in detail, including the McCanns next week. But at the end of the day, the theme of, is that what a normal parent would do in this situation, keeps coming up. And so this is just one aspect of that. But people do mention this.
From here, a massive 2-year review began by the British police, led by Detective Chief Inspector Andy Redwood. He described the mission as, quote, seeking to bring closure to the case. By 2012 to 2013, momentum did return. First of all, a computer-generated image of Madeleine, aged 9, was released. UK detectives identified a number of persons of interest, and by July 2013, Scotland Yard announced new evidence, new witnesses, and opened a formal investigation called Operation Grange. They analysed 40,000 pieces of evidence and reviewed 100,000 pages of files. As part of this investigation, Scotland Yard officially dismissed the sighting made by Tanner. So that's the one earlier, to refresh your minds. That was one of the Tapas 7 who saw someone carrying who they thought could have been a little girl. Andy Redwood and his team said that they were almost certain that the Tanner sighting was unrelated. It had been a red herring, sadly. What didn't appear to be a red herring was the second sighting made by Martin and Mary Smith, the Irish holidaymakers. As a reminder, this was a sighting of a man who was seen carrying a child towards the beach. The Met released e-fit images in 2013 of men who were first drawn in 2008 by private investigators hired by the McCanns. These were of 2 men that the police wanted to track down, including one depiction of the man who was seen carrying the child towards the beach on the night that Madeleine vanished. For lead investigators in Operation Grange, the Smith sighting offered a real time frame of Madeleine's disappearance. In 2014, the first suspect of the Portuguese police, Murat, and his wife were questioned again on Scotland Yard's behalf. This was alongside 8 other suspects. Now, nothing came from these interviews, and it was years later in 2017 when Murat's mother gave the BBC a striking new claim. She claimed that on the night that Madeleine vanished, she had seen a young woman in a plum-coloured top behaving suspiciously outside apartment 5A, and that a small brown rental car was seen speeding the wrong direction down a one-way street toward the apartment. The following October, detectives announced that they had 41 new potential suspects. As a result of the works done by the Met, Portuguese police reopened their inquiry to run parallel with the British one. By 2015, the UK government revealed that it had cost more than £10 million, and by 2017, 4 suspects were formally cleared, though the police hinted at a significant line of inquiry. In 2019, funding continued, extended until March of 2020. Then came the most dramatic of twists. This was when the German prosecutors identified a 43-year-old man named Christian Bruckner, and they believed that this could be a prime suspect. Christian is a convicted sex offender who was already serving time for the SA of a 73-year-old American woman, which took place in Praia da Luz in 2005. And get this, Bruckner had lived near the resort when Madeleine disappeared, and at one point he had even worked in the resort. As will be discussed shortly, Christian Bruckner had recently been released from prison in Germany. The German police declared it a murder inquiry, and they believed that Madeleine was dead, Meanwhile, the British authorities remained hopeful as they say their probe remains a missing persons case, so two very different points of views. The McCanns responded with a statement of raw defiance. All we have ever wanted is to find her, uncover the truth, and bring those responsible to justice. We will never give up hope of finding Madeleine alive, but whatever the outcome may be, we need to know we need peace. In April of 2022, the Portuguese police officially declared Bruckner an arguido, although they withheld his name publicly. On the 3rd of May 2023, the McCanns marked their 16th anniversary of Madeleine's disappearance, saying that she was still very much missed. Later that month, the police sealed off an area near a local dam 30 miles away from Praia da Luz, searching for any clues. After 3 days, nothing was found. And then, in October of 2023, the Portuguese police issued a rather rare apology for the McCanns. They admitted that the investigation had been mishandled, which is that's an understatement, isn't it? Jesus Christ. And that the missing children were not given sufficient priority, and that as foreigners, Kate and Jerry had been left in a vulnerable system that they did not fully understand. In April of 2025, the UK government approved £100,000 in new funding for Scotland Yard to continue their investigation. A month later, the McCanns marked their 18th anniversary of their daughter's disappearance, stating firmly, "Our determination to leave no stone unturned is unwavering." And in June of 2025, German police once again returned to Portugal, leading fresh searches between Praia da Luz and Lagos, near a house where Christian Bruckner had once lived. In addition to Portugal, German police have excavated and examined many locations in Germany where Bruckner had once lived or rented, the most disturbing of which was a factory which contained thousands of hours of child essay footage. The full extent of what this factory contained will be discussed in the next episode, but just to paint a picture, it's, from what we could tell, it's the worst of the worst. There's tears to it, and he was watching the absolute worst of very, very young people. As of September of 2025, Bruckner has been released, and as of this day, he walks free. The German prosecutors did try to keep him behind bars with another trial. This trial was about him essaying multiple women and children in Portugal decades ago, but the case was dismissed with insufficient evidence. We will, in another episode, go over Christian Bruckner in great detail.
Yep.
But for now, we'll just give a little summary just so we can go through the case so everyone understands where we're up to. This guy is, I think he has to be in the top 3 people I've ever seen who have made me not want to say what they've done. It's this and the guy from that band.
Although some believe that Madeleine is dead, as there is no body, there are lingering rumours that she's still alive and has been spotted. In fact, there have been several women who have come forward claiming that they are Madeleine. Not long ago, headlines were filled with the story of Julia Wendell, a young Polish woman who claimed she might be Madeleine. Julia, who had a troubled upbringing and said she had never seen her birth certificate, took to social media in early 2023 to share her suspicions. She pointed to physical similarities, including a rare mark in her eye, and quickly gained hundreds of thousands of followers. Her post went viral, sparking worldwide debate. But the intrigue should have ended when DNA tests confirmed she was not Madeleine, but of Polish descent with some Lithuanian and Romanian ancestry. Another example is a woman named Eugenia Collins, a 22-year-old from the United States. Like Julia, she has created multiple social media accounts to share her story and post what she believes is evidence. She also gave an interview to the Daily Mail, where she said she has proof in the form of DNA results. So according to Eugenia, she had seen the coverage of Julia and said, you know what, because of her stupidity, it made me realize that that's actually me that they're all talking about. So she told the reporter that when she looked at the age process images of Madeleine, that she felt like she was looking in the mirror. However, when she was finally pressed about the DNA evidence, she actually presented was a test that showed that she is 68% English and Northwestern European heritage. And for her, that was like DNA evidence that she was Madeleine, which is absurd. Most bizarrely, however, Eugenia then later said that her biological father was actually none other than Christian Bruckner, who, again, we'll speak about next week. But he's the prime suspect. So she really came out and said that Christian Bruckner is also my father. Anyway, it seems like this woman's clearly very unwell. But there, obviously, her claims are completely unverified. No evidence that she's related to Madeleine, both Eugenia and Julia. However, unfortunately for the McCanns, their torment is never ending because things took a sudden turn when they became embroiled in yet another lawsuit. This time, it was one that struck even closer to home when two imposters, Julia, the lady we just mentioned before from Poland, and a woman named Karen Spragg, 61, from Cardiff, embarked on a 2.5-year campaign of stalking that turned into something much darker than just online controversy. According to prosecutors, the pair began to bombard the McCann family with calls and messages. Some days, it was dozens per day. Julia addressed Kate as mum, a choice prosecutors frame as calculated, a word that lures the recipient into a conversation they're never agreeing to. The family, Kate, Jerry, and the twins, who are now adults, asked for it to stop, but it didn't. Then came the step that changes everything in a stalking case, moving from digital to physical. On the 7th of December 2024, Kate McCann was halfway through an ordinary December evening when a young woman appeared at her front door in Leicestershire and called her mum. Kate was absolutely stunned and then quickly tried to shut the door. A hand reached out and caught the frame. The intruder was filming the whole time. This was Julia. Around that day, a letter was also left behind signed Madeleine X. Now, obviously, whether you view these gestures as just misguided, attempts at contact or perhaps a staged performance for an online, media publicity stunt sort of a thing, regardless, the effect on the inside of the home, the family says, was fear. And there was more. The prosecution says that both these stalkers contacted Amelie, the twin, sending edited images meant to suggest a biological link between the two. And they kept pushing also the idea of forcing a DNA test. So they were discussing ways that they could obtain the family's DNA, like Kate's DNA, like rummaging through the household rubbish and things like that. So obviously, it's taken it too far at that point. Prosecutors also point to an alleged approach to Madeleine's great aunt at a vigil, frightening her as she was paying her respects during a time of grieving. By now, police had already signaled to these two ladies that the claim didn't stack up, but the contact continued. The pair were finally arrested at Bristol Airport in February 2025, months after the doorstep encounter. Both entered not guilty pleas to stalking causing serious alarm or distress. The defense, however, argues that the women didn't meet the legal threshold for stalking. So that's the question that the jury are currently debating, and the case is being tried at Leicester Crown Court.
Yeah, I remember when that Julia was going viral on Instagram because she used to do a lot of live streams.
Yeah.
And it got picked up by a few unscrupulous podcasters who actually pushed it as well.
Yeah,
I won't
right.
say the names, but yeah.
Oh, no, I did not know that.
He's not a good guy anyway, but
yeah, right.
it got pushed quite a bit. People probably know who I'm talking about, to be fair. But it's but at first I felt sorry for her because it was almost like she was just a mentally ill person. Like we said, we were talking about it before, and I don't think she was lying. I think she was telling the truth, how she felt and what she thought, but I think she was wrong.
But if she's there, if she goes, "Hi, Mom," and she's got a camera,
that's too much.
And
yeah, definitely.
And then she tries, Kate slams the door.
Mm-hmm.
She's freaked out by this person, and then she still filming. So it's the filming for me that makes me think she doesn't. I agree with what you're saying. If she was just a mentally ill, I think she knows.
Well, my opinion at first was like, this is a mentally ill person, and I don't know if she is mentally ill, but she seemed like a mentally ill person who then got a lot of attention online. Yeah. Like, think 1.2 million Instagram followers in a few days.
Yeah, oh my god.
Like, that attention must go to your head as well. Like, a lot, it must make you feel quite good, especially if this is someone who's had a tough life.
Yeah.
And I think probably along the road, it probably came more about attention than anything else.
Yeah.
So, I mean, her DNA came back and she's not related to the McCanns in any way, shape or form, but she still pushed it. So I think for her, it became attention. Maybe it was a way for getting people to talk to her, or I don't know.
Yeah. But I obviously went way too far. That's horrifying.
She had a bad life though, by all what it seems, I think. Unless she made that up as well. I don't know.
I assume.
I felt sorry for it at first.
Yeah. But I mean, now
it's a bit too much now.
Imagine being at home, you've lost your daughter's abducted, the whole thing, and then a stalker comes in when decades, and it's just never ending, and now they're just trying to rummage through your rubbish to get something that has your DNA to do their own tests. It's so invasive. I hate stalking cases. They're the ones who, for me, are always the freakiest. Well,
if someone's capable of stalking, they've already crossed the mental mindset into murder. So once someone starts stalking, they're now capable of murder usually. Yeah. Well, they're in that mindset.
Yeah.
They can do it.
Horrifying.
But yeah, horrifying, yeah. But I don't think I have a lot of sympathy for the McCanns. The two twins I do, the siblings.
Yeah.
But not the family, no.
No?
Not the mum and dad, no. There's no way on earth, right? When I remember hearing it as an 11-year-old boy, and I was like, well, that's weird. That's a strange thing to leave your kids unattended in a foreign place.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have a little niece, and I've been in. One time I had to take her home, and the thought of not having hold of her hand,
Yeah.
I had to hold her at all times. Like, there's no way I can let her out of my sight because I'm.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? She's so vulnerable and small. So I had a hold of her hand the entire time. I would never, in a million years, think about leaving her unattended in a hotel on a foreign country. It just annoys me. It's like, I don't know.
Well, you know that there's that TikTok, Instagram couple, YouTube couple. What's it called? Matt and Abby. So they were recently in a scandal, right? They didn't leave their children unattended, but what they did was they were on a cruise ship and they had the nanny cam on their kids, but they wanted to go to dinner and there was too wide of a range to take the little nanny cam's little LCD, whatever the hell. So they had a phone recording the nanny cam, recording their kids, and they went off to dinner. So the kids are left unattended, right? And I feel like that's a modern day version, and they got a massive backlash for it. But apparently back in the day, 2000s, people like, we did this all the time with our kids. Like, I think, and they got up every 20 to 30 minutes. They had a group of people who were all checking in on each other's kids. They had done it for nights on end. It probably wasn't like, it's cases like this that make that seem insane.
Yeah, I mean,
apparently, according to comments I've read, people are like, yeah, my parents did this with me. My parents used to go out at night and leave me at home all alone, or like whatever it was. Like, it was a different time. To be discussed more next week.
Yeah,
we'll probably get into it.
I think it was a bit of a different time. But at the same time, it's still not responsible,
I would never do it.
I would never do it.
People used to leave their kids in the car and go shopping. I was literally speaking to someone the other day who said that their mum would be like, all right, you guys take care of yourselves. I'm going to go do a quick shop because I can't handle getting you guys all in and out. And you guys are I'm going to be 5 minutes. And then rush to the shops.
I mean, we used to do that when we were like 11. I was in the car with my parents and just stay in the car.
Yeah.
I don't know about 4 though. 4's a bit young.
If you have an older sibling there.
An older sibling, it's chill. But like, I don't know. To me, just leaving a 4-year-old, I don't care if it was a different time.
I agree with you, but also...
It's still wrong. It's still silly. Like, surely people had common sense back then and thought, in a 30-minute window, you can do a lot of things in a 30-minute window. And one of them is take a kid. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think they're thinking that at all. That's what they said.
Why are they checking them then if they didn't think about it? Obviously, in the back of the mind that they might be unsafe. That's why they have to go and check on them. Because leaving them for long periods of time is dangerous. So therefore, like half an hour, they're like, oh, half an hour seems like a fair risk management thing. But they knew it was a risk still. They still knew it was a risk. Or they're worried
that one of them's woken up and they need their mom, they need to be resettled. Not that they were at risk. Because I'm pretty sure Kate said this, like, if at any point in our brains, for all the Tapper 7, she's like, none of us had ever thought harm could come to our kids. Otherwise, we would never have put them in that position. So obviously they were thinking, oh yeah, we just need to, if they need to be resettled. Like, they all had kids, well, most of them did. What if one of them woke up and they needed another bottle? Something like that.
Well,
that's what they were thinking.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it, but I think contextually, like, we could look at a lot of things in history and be like, that's so ridiculous that people used to do that.
Yeah.
And then I
don't know.
I also think a false sense of security when you're with other friends who are also doing it.
Yeah, that's that too, I guess. But still, I don't think, I don't know. I just think, yeah. I won't say too much, but...
We'll leave it for next week where we go really in-depth, more into the full controversy, because that's only one part of what everyone has to say about the McCanns and others. So join us next week.
So that's the case of Madeleine McCann.
Yes.
So next week, we'll be delving into suspects and theories around certain things.
Yep.
Go through every single theory. But thank you for watching if you're still sticking around.
Thank you.
And take care. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
It was belly rumbling. It was hungry.
I didn't hear it.
Oh, might be me. Might be me. Yeah, it was me. Shit, I am hungry to be fair, but I'll be alright. But you're not enjoying it. Like, you're not really having a great time. And after you feel dirty as well. Hello? I get calls every day from an Indian guy.
What's Sayabin? Siobhan? It's spelled Sayabin?
Neve gets me.
What's that?
Was it bougie? I thought it was bougie place. Oh, I thought they were in a bougie like.
That's not how you do it.